Now let's take a look at tips for incorporating at least 50 grams of whole grains into your diet every day. This is how I personally do it. I have overnight oats and I have a whole grain. The overnight oats I make every 4 days. Overnight oats start with steel cut oats. For every gram of steel cut oat, that is a gram of whole grain. So when I make a cup starting with 160 grams of steel cut oats, that turns into 4 servings, and there's 40 grams in each of those servings. I'll start with a cup of the steel cut oats. I'll add 4 tablespoons of chia, 4 tablespoons of cinnamon, 2 cups of unsweetened almond milk. I let it sit overnight in the fridge, and that provides 4 days of overnight oats, 40 grams per day of whole grains. I top it with 1 cup of fruit and 1 ounce of nuts and seeds. The other way I get whole grains, so I'm up to 40 at that point. I get another 40, so I'm at 80 actually, with whole grains that I add to salad. So I start with an Instant Pot. I'll add water to it. So the amount of water I'll add will be determined by the grain I'm using. If, for instance, I'm using amaranth, the grain to water ratio is 1 to 2. So I'll be using 1 cup amaranth, 2 cups of water. I rinse 1 cup of the grains, 160 grams, in a colander over the sink. Add the grains to the Instant Pot that already has the water in it. Add a pinch of salt. Select pressure cook, select high, and I'll cook for the time indicated below the grain. So for farro, I'm using a ratio of 1 to 1.5. So 1 cup grain and 1.5 cups water, cooking on high for 7 minutes. I then allow the Instant Pot to release manually instead of by pressing the button, and then transfer the cooled whole grains to a Tupperware, and I will have a quarter of this per day. That will then bring me up to 80 grams of whole grains per day. My strategy is to avoid ready-to-eat whole grains in a large quantity. So I avoid buying 100% whole grain bread. Even though that is a good source of whole grains, I tend to overeat ready-made products like breads. And when I cook whole grains, it takes effort, and I make 4 days worth, and it's not something I tend to overeat. Same is true for 100% whole grain cereal. It's much easier for me to overeat cereal than to overeat pre-made specified steel cut oats I've prepared 4 days at a time. Also, it helps that it doesn't have added sweetener, the steel cut oats I make, which make it easier not to overindulge. And a lot of products that are not 100% whole grain do have whole grains in them, and you could try to get to 50 grams of whole grains by products that are a mixture of refined and whole, but the problem is that refined grains are harmful. Having more than 1 serving a day increases mortality, so I would recommend staying with products that are just whole grain, just 1 ingredient, whole grain.